First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. All right, we are wrapping up this week's shows, and we will end off with Dr. DeAndre Poole from Morgan State University. Let me just tell you, it's been quite a joy hosting this show. I've learned so much myself. Mental health is something that we all have to focus on, just like doing push-ups, jumping jacks, running or walking or swimming. We have to take care of this very important piece right here. So without further ado, let's get to Morgan State University's own Dr. DeAndre Poole. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me again. How are you?
Man, we're glad to have you back. You have so much information to share. What have you been up to?
I've just been doing the usual at the counseling center at Morgan State University, supporting our students on campus through in individual and group therapy, and as well as doing outreach and still spreading the word on my behalf about suicide awareness and supporting all my colleagues on their initiatives. And I've also been doing some more work with the another that I'm alumni of, the Morgan State University tennis team. So that's been fun to be able to come back as in a new position there as well. So just keeping my time busy at Morgan, basically.
Have you been home lately?
To North Carolina, I have not yet, but fall is amongst us, and then before you know it, it'll be time for the holidays. So I'm sure I'll have enough time to get there this year.
Because they got a guy down there, a black man, who's seemingly lost his cotton picking mind.
I can imagine that. Yes, I can definitely imagine that.
He's your lieutenant governor there. He's running for governor.
What do you think he's
You
dealing with? You tell me about it. You tell me what you think.
He's a black Nazi. His name is Mark Robinson. He's running as a Republican for governor, and he thinks slavery should come back. So you being from North Carolina, I got to ask you, what did they put in his water to make this black man want slavery to come back? And he wants to own slaves, to my understanding.
Internalized racism is real, and it's insidious as well. And again, like I say about everything, you have to figure out how you can deal with that brother from an empathetic standpoint, and then it won't, maybe you won't be as frustrated.
An idea, and it might be a bit archaic, but I think he needs to be taken out back to the woodshed and let the brothers have a little time with him.
Okay. What's that gonna do?
I think that's exactly
turn him around a little bit, or will that empower him even more? Because some people you can take back to the woodshed, that don't stop them.
It stopped you and me. I know somewhere along the line, somebody pulled out a switch, a belt, or something to get my attention. I know that. That's a fact. I don't know if you had that experience, but I got jacked up once or twice. Like, you're not going to do this at all, ever again. And I ever did it again. They said, I know you're not. I'm going to make sure about it.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that brother. It sounds like internalized racism, though, if you ask me. I see that a lot.
What's up with Donald Trump? Can you explain his situation from a psychological standpoint? I mean,
it's not that hard. It's not that hard to see that Donald Trump definitely suffers with some type of a personality disorder. Now, if you want to, pick it apart, is it narcissism, which it sounds like it is, or is it some borderline, or whatever the case is? At some point, it really doesn't matter. It's definitely dealing with narcissism. Donald Trump, I don't think he ever expected to be in this position when he got to be the president from the beginning. But once he did, it just spared his ego. I don't think he has a lot of viewpoints of the people that support him, but he understands that they support him. So he's feeding into that. A lot of, the people that support Donald Trump are people from the South. You know what I mean? people from that type of thinking from the South. That's not really where Donald Trump is from. You
So,
know,
so,
it,
can you help me to understand? And this is National Suicide Prevention Month,
it
and
is.
we're gonna get deep into that because I got some questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
But racism, what are your thoughts on racism? Without sharing mine, I want to hear your unadulterated thoughts on racism. Somebody not liking you, hating you, discriminating against you simply because of the color of your skin.
Well, my thoughts would definitely be maybe more extreme and even more extreme than the average Black person. I think I'm learning, because it's funny you asked that question. I don't know how well I'm going to answer this. You keep me back on track, but I've been thinking about that lately because I've had conversations with people here, that one person here that lives in Baltimore, born and raised. And then from that conversation, I've had some conversations with colleagues, and from them all, we have one colleague there that's from Inglewood, California, but the rest of them are from, aside from myself, are from the DMV area. And they can actually sit around and ask themselves, when was the first time that you experienced racism? You know what I mean? So as I've sat with that and thought about that, it makes me laugh, because to even be able to, as a Black person, to even be able to have that mindset to sit and ask that question is definitely coming from a place of privilege, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because growing up, we would fight with kids in the kindergarten playground, and basically beat them up for calling us N-words and things of that nature. So I don't, going from one side of town that looks a certain side of the way, and then literally crossing the tracks and going and seeing another side of town that looks this way. I don't know that I never understood. I don't know that I never figured out what racism was from the beginning. You know what I mean? So my views on it are a little different. But racism is just something that, I use that word, insidious. It's just something that grows and festers, and it starts to pit people from that community that's being discriminated against each other, and then so they can never really have a sense of community to try to raise above it. So that's what it is. It's just an insidious practice that turns the people that is visiting on against each other, and they can never really unite to raise above it. If you can't unite, then I see that with a lot of other groups that are discriminated against. If we talk about like the Jewish community, for example, or the Latino community or whatever, I don't see them not being able to unite uh, some of the ways that I see some people of African descent, and that makes me very nervous when you think about racism.
I have to remind you, Doc, that we are only 13% of the population.
Okay.
And given that number, if you could contrast that with the Latino community, they have surpassed us in population, and people are coming across the border every day. Now, a couple years ago, the Haitians tried to come across the border, and they were met with resistance by men on horseback with whips.
That's happened so many times just in my lifetime.
So what I mean is, we have a finite number of us, and the traps are already laid out, from poor schools to mass incarceration, higher prices for mortgages, car insurance, even food.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, throughout our history, and our history did not begin nor end with slavery, we have invented, we have gone to the moon, we have become doctors, lawyers, judges. We've mastered every discipline that we've been afforded the opportunity to enter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I think along the way, we have become, we've taken on that American individualism. where we have been able to move from West Baltimore to Owens Mills, and I don't want to see nothing. I don't want to see where I come from ever again. The problem is we get out to Owens Mills and we think the fight is over. We leave Washington, D.C. and go to Prince George's County or Montgomery County, and we think the fight is over. And then we get the wake-up call. We get that call 3 o'clock in the morning. A person's son, a person's daughter, encounter with the police. Yeah, I said police. That's how we say it.
Mm-hmm.
The police.
And then what?
Well, you know, Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin. That whole scenario all over again. So it just keeps us in prayer, constant prayer. And but it puts a lot of us in the mindset. Now you're an educated man. I'm sure you've come across the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, where he talks about how in Brazil, the oppressed take on the mentality of the oppressor.
Mm-hmm.
P. Diddy is a classic example.
Yeah.
He supposedly comes from modest, humble beginnings, but he takes on this wealth and is willing to do anything seemingly, according to the stories, to build on that empire, to keep it. But now you have become the very thing that we despise. You have become the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happens a lot of time. We turn our backs on where we come from. Like the dope dealer. Yeah. A lot of times we revere, you know, the kingpin, whether it's Raphael Edmonds in DC or Peanut King in Baltimore or some of the other kingpins, Frank Lucas. But you were selling poison to your people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you rich, your mama rich, your son rich. They go to private school, but you were selling poison to your own people. And that's not funny.
It's something about that. It's something about somebody that'll give somebody a drug that they won't use themselves. I've always found that a little off-putting. Definitely.
I'll tell you what's worse than that. The drug addict turned drug dealer. Somebody who used to use heroin, cocaine, and crack, and now they sell it. God freed them from the plantation of addiction, but now they have the audacity to sell it without remorse.
I don't know that they could do that successfully without relapsing.
I've seen it done. Now, one of them caught 10 to the dome, right around the corner. Went from an addict to a kingpin, but then he caught 10 of them straight to the dome. Never used the drug again, but he insisted on selling that poison to people. But
a lot of it. I heard you say about P. Diddy came from humble beginnings, and and a lot of these drug dealers, all of them aren't that story. You know, it's one thing with somebody that doesn't, I guess, that doesn't know any better and is just desperate to get their next meal. But somebody like that entertainer who you name, I don't know that person came from a humble beginnings. I think that's a person who has pretty much always gotten his way. You understand what I'm saying? And will go through anything.
Privilege.
Yeah, came from a place of privilege. It's hard. Like I was saying earlier, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for us as African Americans to admit when we come from a place of privilege. You know what I mean? And why our place of privilege may be different from the majority's place of privilege. Some of us do. And I think that's a person with like a lot of people who are out here doing these things, which is a response to racism, are people who have always gotten their way. You understand what I'm saying? And don't know how to accept, you know, hard work and without doing things to cut corners or instant gratification. You know what I mean?
Were you raised with the values that to whom much is given, much is required?
Explain that. Expand that question a little bit for me.
To whom much is given, much is required. Meaning, if God has blessed you to be better off than the average person on the average person on the planet does not have gas and electric, running water, a bed to sleep in, clothes to wear of their choice, a car. We are so fortunate in this country. We have no idea how the rest of the world lives.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who live in war-torn countries. But my understanding is, because God has been so good to me, it is imperative, and not so much as a Christian, but as a child of God, whatever I should be, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever, to be a blessing to somebody. We come from Africa, ultimately, where there's a sense of communalism, and it's not always been practiced out. I mean, there were African kings who sold black people into slavery. They lost those values. But historically, Africa, Asia, there's a sense of communalism. I exist because we exist. But in America, is I exist because I exist. It's individualism. Me, myself, and I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that collectivistic community, yes, definitely is different. A different way of looking at a worldview in African communities and African continent as well as Asian continent. But if we're talking about racism, like when I was speaking of it earlier and using that word insidious, yeah, I was talking about African Americans, but I'm talking about Africans as well, who live in a place where they are the majority, who don't know, what it feels like to be, amongst people who don't look like you for the most part. And but what I find striking, if you're talking about racism, is the racism that also goes on there, where they're the majority. There's a lot of colorism that happens within the community there. I've heard that there's a lot of practices that go on, like bleaching, for example, and I see a lot of the same communal, internal racism and colorism practices that I see here, also in the Asian community as well. You know what I mean? So what do you think? That's why I say it's so insidious, because it can go all the way to another continent where there's not majority European. You know what I mean?
The European is very organized. When I see my African sisters in weaves, it's a little baffling. And it's baffling because you come, like you said, you come from a continent where there's nothing but black people.
Mm-hmm.
And why in the world would you think we want? Well, I shouldn't say that, because that's a hind parts whipping from our sisters. But I just love us as we are. You don't have to do all of that for me. I just like you the way you are. You mentioned Africa. I think of all of the countries in Africa. I think it's 54. 53 of the 54 have been colonized by Europeans. Only Ethiopia has been able to stand alone. So that means the French, the British, the Germans, the Spanish, the Portuguese, they have in some way colonized Africans. They did the same thing that they did to us, except they did it to them in their hometown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. On their home soil. Yeah, that's interesting about definitely. They still don't have majority there. They're still not in a classroom where it's one of them and amongst all of the others, even though
I forgot, they use Christianity also.
They did.
They do a lot of pimping with the Christian. They give you the Bible and then they got your land. South Africa. These from the Netherlands, from the Dutch country, all the way down to South Africa, the Boers. It's one of the first papers I wrote in college about the Dutch. You come all the way from there to South Africa, and you make the majority of the people live on the most messed up part of the land, just like the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. In 1945, these people were made to live on the worst land in that part of the world. And then these invaders expect them to be happy. You took my land. You took my house. Be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with that. And as we've seen, there's no end to the war. October 7th, they retaliated, snatched up these Jewish hostages. And then it makes me think of the Jews from Ethiopia, the original Jews, the black Jews.
Yes, buddy, you're going there. You're going there. I don't know if I could touch that topic with you.
Well, we don't, we're not trying to cause any revolution, but we do come from an educated people. Yeah. And we know that all of the holy books come straight out of Africa, all of the history. We know that the oldest DNA comes from Namibia. The oldest DNA comes from the San Bushmen in Namibia. So that means that everybody on the planet has African roots, no matter how white you are. I'll tell you something else. When we see people with eyes like this, we say, when we see a black person with eyes like this, we'll say they got Chinese eyes. Au contraire, if you look at the San Bushmen, and I give you the classic prototype was Nelson Mandela. He had tight eyes. Chinese have his eyes.
Is that what you see?
Yeah. Everything started in Africa. Humanity started in Africa. Everything the Greeks and the Romans have, they got it from Africa.
Well, that pedagogy, like you mentioned earlier, that most importantly started in Africa. So we're definitely an educated people because we invented education, basically.
No question. The first universities, University of Timbuktu, Egypt, those houses of knowledge in Egypt and, throughout Africa.
It's interesting. You mentioned Egypt and you mentioned something about the ladies earlier, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit because I had an African-American class back in high school. I went to an all-black high school, and we talked about how basically wigs and the practice of wearing it started in ancient Egypt before race mixing. But have you noticed that now with the weaves, the way that the hair is worn, that now other races now have started to copy that style from
a woman introduced me to that white women wear more weaves than black women.
It wasn't always the case. They also the fingernails and going to the nail shop and stuff. Now they've started to do that more too. That wasn't something they were doing from the beginning. And it's obvious is interesting to me, the cycle, because some people think that black women wear weaves to look more like European, which I disagree, because again, it's something that was a practice that we started. But let's just say, for the sake of right now, that that's true. You know what I mean? You got them trying to be more like them, but then this other group who they're supposed to be copying, loving their style so much that now they come back and copy them. So it's just like this domino effect is very odd.
Everything started in Africa, but a black woman showed me how white women and Asian women wear as much weave, if not more, than black women. And you can tell down the bottom, if it's all real thick and full, it's like, that's not yours.
Mm-hmm. I think the reasons for wearing it is different, though. I think so, because I think that black hair especially for women, can be very difficult to maintain. You know what I mean? And a lot of our black women are not always put up on the pedestal the way that some other women are, and they tend to have to work, have jobs.
It's because of media. It's all media. The very first class I took in media at Coppin State, the professor had us watch this film called The Birth of a Nation. Mm-hmm. It was by D.W. Griffith. Mm-hmm. And he had us watch it. This was the first feature film in the United States. And it was a film that gave us every negative stereotype.
That's the one where the man walked his wife up to the slave owner house, right? And went back and picked them up.
I don't remember that part, so I can't speak on that. But okay. I do know it laid the foundation for what is in Hollywood today. Like men wearing dresses. Anything to dehumanize or to feminize a strong black man, or even to mischaracterize a black woman. And now, today, we feed into it. I mean, I'm looking at some of the stuff that's on social media, Everybody wants to dance half naked on social media. I'm like, you somebody's grandmother.
What social media are you looking at? You on TikTok?
TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, just people half naked. Everybody, they can't wait to put a bikini on and dance. It's like, you think your man really wants you out there looking like it? I guess some dudes are okay with it, but I can't picture my grandma on TikTok half naked with a tattoo.
Who said they have a man though?
Yeah, how about that? So Suicide Prevention Month. Come on now, let's get to it. We got about 30 minutes.
Okay.
I got a phone call. I was supposed to have a guest last week, and she's a mental health expert down in Florida, but she couldn't come on because she was dealing with 2 suicides. She did come on the show this week, and one of the things that came out, and I read this fact, that 17 veterans kill themselves every day. According to an expert, that's a low number. Tell me about Morgan State University's effort to make people aware, to make students, faculty, etc., aware of suicide prevention.
Oh, well, that's some very despairing numbers to hear, and I'm sad. That makes me sad to hear that. But at Morgan, it's interesting that we talked about that because I've been on here a few times and talked about the suicide awareness walk that we've had 2 years in a row, and that we're gonna have with some changes coming up in April. So basically, with that was a partnership with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. They send us a lot of material that we're able to pass out throughout the campus, and hopefully that will expand through the families of our students as well as through the community. But what I found and what I've seen this month in Suicide Prevention Month is that a lot of other organizations, student orgs on campus, have participated this month and done events. You understand what I'm saying? So now I'm happy to see that this initiative is starting to grow legs, because I didn't necessarily see that the last 2 years or whatever. If I don't want to leave anything out, but anyway, I see that the word is starting to get out, and so people are starting to do their own events, have their own initiatives, and conversations are starting to happen in different places. And I think that that's the main way to attack this epidemic in our community, is to first of all talk about it, because it's taboo overall, but it's definitely taboo in our community just to even say the word suicide. And if we could start to talk about it more, like I've said before, people who may be having feelings like that won't feel ashamed to just go talk to somebody, whether that be their parent or whether that be somebody in the community. If we can normalize, that this is something that happens in our community, then people can reach out, and once they reach out, then we can get them help. Because the main help, just to say, the main help for somebody who's actively suicidal is hospitalization. That person needs to be hospitalized so they can be safe from themselves. Definitely, there's nothing wrong with that form of treatment, but we can't give that to them if we don't know they're dealing with that. Yeah.
Biggie Smalls had a song. I don't want to live no more. Sometimes I hear death knocking at my front door. Every day is a hustle, another drug to juggle, another day, another struggle. Is that not a cry for help?
Bruh, Biggie Smalls had a whole song about suicidal thoughts. That's crazy you said that. Definitely. I don't, sometimes music, I've been thinking about that a lot growing up. I'm a baby of the 80s, so I grew up on rap music. I'm one of the ones that's getting up into my mid to late 40s that start, that's grew up on rap music. That's my era. So sometimes with rap, I've thought about rap music, how it has influenced people of African descent in other countries who are more underserved. And so to tell them to go and get a gun or to do something may be meaning something much different than it would to somebody in the United States. So I've thought about messages from rap music overall. Now, is that a person who is just venting through a form of art? You know what I mean? And that's one thing. Or is that somebody who's having an active cry? It could be either or. I don't know. I would need to, observe that person more, but definitely could be on that path that you're talking about. And as a matter of fact, if I ever had somebody that was a client or somebody who was just a family member and they were engaging in things like that, or things that had that type of message or that was too sad or whatever, I would definitely probe to see if they're okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're not, but it just definitely means that that would be somebody that you may want to make sure that they're okay. Definitely. Yeah. That's a good question.
This week I was actually invited to the White House for a violence prevention speech by the president and his wife, Judge Joe and Jill Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And as you talk about hip hop, violence is at the core of a lot of hip hop songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I think it wasn't always that case. At the beginning, rap music was about just having fun, and then we got into some social justice type of rap in the 90s, and then once gangster rap hit, it kind of really just when you had your Snoop Dogs and your Dr. Dre's and everybody, the West Coast just kind of turned it all around for us. And I think at that time there was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of things like the LA riots, and we were still breaking through on a social level as
But
Black
we're talking
people.
about killing soldiers in our own army. Now, earlier we talked about us being 13% of the population. Who kills soldiers in their own army? We only 13%. But we got so much venom, so much vitriol, so much hatred for somebody because they live in a different part of town or they wear different tennis shoes than we do. And my God, for a young rapper to come through Baltimore, damn, they got a 50-50 chance of even surviving by getting shot by somebody in their own damn clique. Why? Why do I want to shoot you? I don't even know you.
That's tough. That's tough, man. I mean, I think we talked about this before on here. Yeah, we are 13%. That's a problem. That makes it more of a necessity for us to bond together as a community and not hurt each other, but
We 40% of the prisons. Black men are 38% of the prisons.
that's definitely
13%
racist.
of the population, but 40% of the prisons. Black men. We star in that movie. In my neighborhood, somebody might say, you don't know nothing about bidding. You know what bidding is? Doing a prison sentence.
Oh, bidding, yeah.
You don't know nothing about
That's like
bidding.
a rite of passage or something.
Yeah, no, I don't. And I don't want to. My daddy
Don't forget to
didn't, and I
mention
don't want
that
my
that
son to
prison.
either.
Don't forget to mention that prison system is big business. It's really slavery all over again.
Yeah, it is.
Big business is adding to the money of this country, the wealth of this country, just like slavery got us to where we are
$13
now.
for a phone call.
Say it again.
$13 for a phone call.
Yeah, man. I wish that rap music could turn around from the gangster music a little bit now and get back on something else, because we had that whole movie when it was necessary. It's not anymore. Now it's been just problematic, especially when I think about stuff like drill music and Chicago rap, and it's like the last thing they need in Chicago is somebody rapping about shooting somebody. You know what I mean?
I do. Chicago got a murder problem.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. And a lot of it does center around that. Is it's all about what you expose yourself to, sir. Exposure. You expose yourself to anything, it can become more normal than it was before. Yep. So yeah, but with the Suicide Awareness Month, that the conversations are picking up on campus, and hopefully that will definitely continue.
What have you seen? What are the reasons behind a student wanting to commit suicide?
Well, hopelessness is always it is a factor. You know what I mean? Just feeling. What does hopelessness mean? Just feeling like in a state of despair where you don't really see a future or a reason to future. You don't see anything, or maybe sometimes, especially when you have college students who have set such great expectations and goals for themselves, and then they get it if they don't have someone to help them shape those goals, then they get into a situation where they realize this is harder than I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? I have to do this, I have to do that. Can I do this? And if I'm not that, will I be able to accomplish that goal? And if I can't accomplish that goal, who am I? So just these type of things, getting to that place of hopelessness, and they need help, somebody to help them reshape what didn't happen whenever they were developing those goals, help them reshape that and let them know, life is real. It's not fictional. It's not a fairy tale. It's not fantasy. That's the word I'm looking for. And you can still have those things, but this is the way that has to happen in more of a realistic manner. Yep. Hopelessness is a big one.
I got a question for you. How long have you been at Morgan?
This is going on my 3rd year. Yeah. I'm a graduate of Morgan as well.
Right. Perfect. What's the difference between when you were a student and today?
Well, first of all, they have this thing called social media and the internet that we didn't have before. So that definitely puts a lot of pressure on our students.
Why? Why?
Expectations, again, a lot of things, a lot of people are really good at social media, so they have a way of putting things out there, like pictures, for example, that just aren't really real. There's not fantasy. You can look at somebody's picture and look like they have a million friends, on there, and you really talk to them. They have like 2 friends and they're sitting in their room anxious about not having friends. You know what I mean? So that type of thing. People are good at social media. These young students, they can make one thing look like something totally different. Yeah. Everybody's a producer.
So
But also a different thing that at Morgan, and also that when I was there, is that I like to say is that there are a lot more student organizations on campus. Like I said, and some of them have been doing things for Suicide Awareness Month. And then also they have more graduate programs than they had when I was there. And I definitely see students able to get more internship opportunities than that was there when I was there. Some more exposure to get into the work field. And I'm definitely glad to see that change. That's what we need.
have we as adults gotten smarter? From the time you were a student till now, do you see older Black folk as getting wiser and smarter? And let me tell you why I ask. A lot of times we won't pass the ball to our young people.
Mm-hmm.
I won't name any organizations by name because I want to keep your reputation clear, but I can. But we got people who have been in charge of this organization and that organization for 20 years. It's like, dude, when are you going to pass the damn ball? You ain't the only one who want to shoot.
Place of empathy again, brother. Evolution takes time. You know what I mean? I'd like to think that some of our adults my age and older than me are a little smarter, that we're starting to look at different perspectives and different people worldviews. That might not change any of our thoughts or our behaviors, but at least we're starting to recognize that other people think and act and grow up and behave differently. I also think that the pandemic has also made us all smarter and more tolerable. We're definitely much more of a technically savvy people than we ever would have been without that pandemic. That's for sure. Without the pandemic, I'm not even sure if we would be doing this. You know what I mean? I don't know. You correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right. We started in December 2020 because I couldn't interview people. We needed a safe mechanism because this is what I love. This is my passion.
Yeah.
I found what I love to do and I do it.
So, as you know, there was a lot of resistance to a lot of things using technology to uplift and benefit and stuff like that. And now we just became technically savvy. It seemed like overnight. So yeah, that definitely helped. It's a big difference as well. So I like to think that people are what we are as a people, as adults, getting smarter. Maybe it's just not moving as quickly as we wanted to, but things take time. It's all about, it's all about patience. Patience is a skill.
Well, speaking of the pandemic, speaking of mental health, I'm still hearing discussions, arguments about people saying they should take the vaccine or not take the vaccine. The vaxxers versus the anti-vaxxers.
Mm-hmm.
Did you take the shot?
I sure did. And flu shot too. And I'm thinking about getting it to come up again recently. Now, last year, you'd asked me this question. I was a little tired of it because I just felt like I had been pumped with enough vaccines and it was whatever. And I didn't, I got sick a couple times last year, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? So I'm back on the vaccines for this year. But man, that pandemic just opened up Pandora's box. And that's just to say it minimally when we're talking about mental health with a lot of people. And that goes back to racism again, because we've said this before on our show. As Black people, we are taught that we're strong and whatever we're dealing with, we're supposed to move past it and get past it. In our community, we're still not even talking about the impact of the pandemic and how it affected everybody, brought
A
all
lot
their
of Black people
skeletons out.
died from the shot.
Huh?
I believe a lot of Black people died from taking the shot.
Really?
Yeah, their bodies weren't able to handle it.
Okay. You're not a supporter of the shot?
I took 2 of them. The second one left a big old bruise on my arm. But I know people who were adamantly against it. This one lady cussed me out in front of my house. I can't believe you took the shot. Mind your damn business is what I wanted to tell her. You do what you got to do, and I'm going to do. But let me tell you what pushed me to get the shot. I'm out Randallstown, Northwest Baltimore County, majority Black. And I saw white people lined up getting the shot. That's what prompted me. I'm like, y'all never come here, but they coming here for the shot. So that's what prompted me. And say what you want, I could care less. But that I was like, hold up. Now they coming all the way over here to get the shot. I think I need to take this shot.
Well, what makes you think that some people died from taking it? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just want to know what you think.
I think they already had pre-existing conditions and their bodies weren't able to handle some of the toxins that were in the shot. Hank Aaron. Some of these people had not even been to the hospital in years or what have you. Then all of a sudden they did. They took the shot. I do believe that. I believe there's stuff that the government has not and will not tell us.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Donald Trump did anybody any good with his chicanery, talking about drinks and bleach.
Well, what do you speak about if you think that the shot has saved any lives at all? Because if the white folks are lined up at Randallstown to get the shot, I hope it helps somebody.
I think it helped a lot of people, but I think some people had adverse reactions and died.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about just the loneliness. If you caught COVID and you're in a nursing home, your family can't come to visit you. So a lot of those people, whether they die from COVID or loneliness, they dead. They're dead. Ding, ding, lights out. A story close to home was this man. He was a veteran, and all he wanted was full disability. He had partial disability, but for years he talked about getting full disability. Well, he got full disability, found himself in a nursing home, and his son spent all his money, and he died. So the lesson I learned is don't be wishing nothing bad on yourself.
Right.
I want full ability.
Yeah, definitely. Me too.
The
I have
word
things I
says,
want to do.
yeah, speak life over yourself. One of them songs says, sometimes you have to encourage yourself. You got to speak victory over yourself. Tell me about the faith. Tell me about faith.
Well, what you just said, and when you mix it with mental health, and I've been talking to sometimes when I'm speaking about mental health and some of these techniques, CBT is what comes to mind when you're talking about what you're talking about, speaking things into existence. It aligns. People like to disalign religion and mental health treatment, but a lot of times what I've been seeing is they actually align. And whether you want to say it's faith based or is mental health based, it just depends on what side of the coin you depend to look on at that time. If you're in the flesh, or if or if you're speaking from an educational perspective. But what you just said is so powerful about speaking things into existence and speaking positivity into your life, and into your life from a mental health perspective, versus speaking negativity into your life, into your health. It's all about having that positive mindset. It sounds so cliche and so like, oh, you went to school a million years for that, but I'm telling you, it's so positive. It's so profound. Good thoughts, good positive affirmations. I give you an example. For example, back, like I said, as far as being on the tennis example, right? And growing up as a competitive tennis athlete, being out there on the court, you don't have any coaching. You have to figure out how to win on your own. When I was younger, if I missed a shot or did something bad, I'd yell at myself. I'd yell negative things at myself. And then I went and tried to get this way where I didn't yell at all. And I realized that wasn't really working with coaches. That wasn't really my thing. I did better if I got it out. So what I started to do is I kept yelling, but I yelled positive things. Instead of saying you're horrible, I yell you can do it, or yell some type of an instruction or something like that. That had a positive, effect. So you do the same thing in life. When you want to yell at yourself, try to yell something good. Try to phrase it from a positive perspective, and that goes with the positive thought, positive behavior. Yeah, definitely.
Here's something insidious. When we were kids, a lot of times our mothers would say, "I don't want you hanging with so and so," and you'd be like, "Ma, that's my friend." And then you might get something to the effect of, "I'm gonna choose your friends for you until you know how to choose your own friend."
Mm-hmm.
But now we're grown. You in your 40s, I'm in my late 50s. Talk to me about the significance of the people in our circle.
That's not a bad thing to help you.
I'm right here. You got the full
Okay,
screen.
okay. That's not a bad thing to help um your 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 children pick their friends. It's really not. That's all about shaping and putting them in the right place. Sometimes I always think about it like when parents say you're hanging out with the wrong crowd. We all want to look at our kids as being great, just like we want to look at our parents as being great, but everybody is human, because what they don't realize is that the other parents are saying that about your child too. You know what I mean? So there's some responsibility to take it from that. But to answer your question about adults, it's that goes back to what I was saying earlier about what you surround yourself with, what you expose yourself with. Exposure, because if you expose yourself with certain things, you get that can become normal to you. So it's very important in your circle. I tell young people this all the time, to surround yourself with positive people. Obviously, people that want good things in life, but people that have similar goals. Similarities, similar goals, and just be careful who you have around you, not just because of how their behavior might affect you, but how their behavior might rub off on you. Exposure is so big. Yeah. All of
Okay,
these things go back to religion too, because if you want to be positive through prayer and having a good spiritual relationship with God, that helps you be positive. And then if you want to have positive people in your life, you know what I mean, then you want to get them from a place that is about positivity, which would be a religious, you know, environment.
I'm going to use the word spiritual, because I find some of them Christians, some of them need some therapy. But to take me to the next topic, the next level. What advice do you give students in relationships?
I've said this. I'm telling you, and this is go for students, and this can go for people at same age range or maybe a little older out of school. People will endure so many things. They can endure medical challenges. They can endure loss of parents. They can endure all types of mental disorders, all types of things. But the minute they get in that relationship and that boy or girl leave them, then they ready to come to the office for therapy. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going through a history of them. I'm like, you've been through all of this, and this is what you come for? But I think that the question, first of all, is should students be in a relationship? Is that the age range to be in a relationship, or should they be focusing on school? You know what I mean? And that's the first thing. But if they must be in one or experiment or whatever, I just think the main thing to do is to take your time with the person, because everything can be so great when you first meet, you know what I mean? And you have that romantic attraction that goes on. And if you actually get past that and actually get to know who it is that you're dealing with, you make some different decisions. I'm thinking about churches. I say that too because I know, for example, people who do some churches, in order to be married there, you have to do marriage counseling. You know what I mean? And I've met some couples who couldn't wait for the marriage counseling and decided to go somewhere else to get married instead of staying there. And I promise you that they regret that. Because everything they learned after the marriage that they rushed through, they could have sifted through all of that before they even got there. But man, some people are so I'm not going to use that D word, desperate, but they're so wanting to get into that they don't want to hear the truth because it might despair, push them away from getting into that relationship before, and they just get through it. But then they come to therapy later on. You know what I mean? So my main thing is to, first of all, for students to decide if they should be in a relationship or not, if that's their focus, and if they must, take your time before you actually go into it. Yeah, at least a month. Gosh. At least a month. Really, you need, 3 months.
Relationships can lead to suicidal thoughts.
Now we're getting into the catch-22 chicken and the egg type of thing, because
I mean, you said they went through all of this stuff. They lost somebody, this, that, but it's that relationship. And God forbid you put some alcohol, a depressant on top of it.
As normally goes with it, yeah. But what I wouldn't say that it's that relationship that actually led them to that. It was whatever they've been through, which is probably some type of trauma before, that's got them really, really intense about fixing that trauma through the relationship, and also really, really reactive to rejection. That is really what led to the suicide, whatever that is, that disorder is, or that those symptoms are. And the relationship is just the thing that, pushed it, or that they were reactive to. As that type of person probably shouldn't be in a relationship. They should probably be focusing on their schoolwork and coming to the counseling center to work on getting through, some of those symptoms.
Dr. Poole, what my hope is that we can begin to help take away the stigma of therapy, of counseling, all of those things associated with mental health. It is not something previous generations did a great job at talking about, but it is my goal, and it is the goal of this show, to help illuminate your words and help you to spread your message to as many people as possible. And I'm so glad to hear about the other organizations on campus who have picked up the mantle of Suicide Prevention Month.
Thank you for saying that. Let's give our kids some grace. Our kids some grace, and we don't want them to grow up too fast. They turn 18 legally. They adults at that age, but they don't really mature till they about 25. So let's give them some grace from that 18 to 25. Let's not rush them out there to the world too fast. Let's put them out there a little bit.
Man, my mother said, hey, Dr. Poole, my mother said at 18, you're leaving.
I know, but back then 18, you didn't need a master's degree to make 50,000 neither.
She ain't care about none of that. At 18, you up and out of here. Right. And she batted 4 for 4. We were all gone at 18.
They need master's degrees now. That take a little bit longer. We didn't need that back then.
They need common sense, Doc. If you had your choice between leaving a kid $1 million or common sense, what would you leave them?
I would think about that one to the next show, okay?
I'm gonna leave them common sense because you can have $1 million and no damn sense, and that money be gone in 6 months.
That's true. You can have a lot of common sense too, and not be able to to make it to make any money. So I wish I could leave half and half.
Common sense, book sense. Huh? Book sense without common sense is nonsense. Common sense to get you. I know a girl. I better not say this. I better clean this up. A PhD who couldn't cross the street. All of this book sense, no common sense.
So what'd she do to get across that street?
I guess she just closed her eyes. I'm just saying we can have so much. And let me tell you, I've come to realize academia, the world that you live in, man, that thing is more political than politics.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
I feel for you. And I'm glad you're on this show. And we're going to keep bringing you on because the college campus is no chump. It's work. Yeah. You got to be smart.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. When it gets too political, the only ones that feel it trickles down to the students, and I don't like that part. But I try my best to, keep it not be that one that make it too. Politics are necessary too, but it's my job to keep the students first, and that's what I'll continue to do.
That's what I appreciate about you because I remember. I'm finishing up my master's at Morgan now, but as an undergrad, you really want somebody who's got your back, who's encouraging you, who's helping you and inspiring you to finish.
Mm-hmm.
How many students don't go back? How many older people haven't gone back? We want to finish. We want to graduate. We want to walk the stage and get on to whatever's next.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Mr. Glover, because not just I talk to my kids a lot about my students a lot about what they're going to do when they get after, because it's a lot of people that graduate and they fall into that criticism that is just a piece of paper. I really try to shape them for that place afterwards, so their mental health will continue to flourish, because it is nothing like getting out of college and working at McDonald's. A lot of people have done it.
You're right. Dr. DeAndre Poole, how can people get in touch with you?
They can contact you, and I'm sure you'll put them in contact. My email address is deandre.poole@morgan.edu. On Facebook, I'm D Poole. And yeah, that's the best place.
Thank you for caring.
Follow the Morgan Counseling Center on Instagram.
Good deal. Thank you for caring, Dr. Poole. Thank you for giving a damn about our people and all people.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, sir. Have a great weekend. If I think better, I do better. This has been a New Life Recovery Show. Special thank you to Vin McCormick. Good afternoon, world.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.